and welcome back to another week of Growing Together, where we grow together in our faith, our family, and our friends. We are back at it with the rules of life, taking a look at different biblical stories to try and find out, what does Jesus ask of us? What are the rules of life? Or are there rules of life? Or why the rules of life? Nevertheless, just like last week, we talked about how games always have a set of rules. And I want to share with you another favorite game of mine called Monopoly. Basically, Monopoly is a game where there's different businesses around the board and you go round and round and round trying to buy them all out and force everyone else to give them all your money, so at the end, you have all the money. And while that game is fun and I do like to make my friends cry, it's not exactly what Jesus has in mind. So let's hop right into our story that comes out of Luke chapter 12. And where we hop into our story, it looks like Jesus is in a crowd teaching all sorts of different things when somebody pops up and says, "Hey Jesus, will you tell my brother to split our inheritance with me?" And Jesus was all like, "I'm not here to be your judge or umpire, but I will tell you a story." He tells the story of a rich man who plants a huge crop, and he grows so much of it that he doesn't have enough room in his barn to keep it all. And so he's left with this conundrum of, what do I do with all this extra stuff? And so let me ask you that question. If you grew a crop and you got a bunch extra and you couldn't fit it into your barn, what would you do? You probably wouldn't want to leave it out to just waste away. Would you hand it out to other people, or would you try and find a way to keep it? I'm sure you gave the right answer, but let me tell you what Jesus says the rich man did. It says here that the rich man said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barn and build a bigger one. I will store my extra grain in them. I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain stored away for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and have a good time." He took the effort to tear down his barn and build a bigger one? Now, I think you know that that might not be the best option. And Jesus goes on in the story to tell how God responds to this rich man's greediness. God said to him,
"You foolish man, tonight I will take your life away from you, then you will get what you prepared for yourself."
Whoa, Jesus, that's kind of extreme. Does somebody want to check on Jesus? But Jesus wraps up his story by saying this: "That is how it will be for whoever stores things away for themselves, but is not rich in the sight of God." Jesus tells the story of a man who has more than he could ever need. And no matter where you live, there's always people around your community who could use a little extra help. And Jesus shows through this story that it is not God's will for us to keep everything that we can for ourselves, that instead, it's important to share. Which brings us to our bottom line today: to simply share what you have. And a lot of times we like to think about this in the terms of money, like the Monopoly game I talked about. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we do have an abundance of money that we can use to share with our community who's in need. But then, just like this story, sometimes people don't need money, but they need food, they need water. Or they might need a skill that you have to offer. How many of you are handy at home and know how to fix things? Or might be gifted in being able to do lawn care? But the point is, no matter what your skill or what you have of abundance, God calls us to share it with those around us who might need it. That whatever it is that we have, we don't get to take it with us when we die. And so instead of trying to hoard all the things that we find good and like to have to ourselves, then maybe we should think about sharing it with those around us. And I honestly think that that might be one of our biggest evils that we have in our country, is that we have a lot of resources when it comes to money or food or water. And we choose as a society to not share it as much as we could. But I believe that we can at least begin to change that mindset with our own individuality, with our own attitudes of giving, of sharing what we have. Because one, we can't take it with us when we die. But two, and more importantly, is it's one more way to show our neighbors that we love them. And just like we talked about last week, it doesn't really matter if you agree with your neighbor on really anything. God still calls us to love our neighbors, whether we like them or not. And that is our rule of life today, to simply share. I know it sounds easy, I know it sounds trivial, but sometimes we struggle with it more than we'd like to admit. And as I hope we're always looking to continue to grow as ourselves and to grow in our community, that we might take this a little more seriously and try and share whatever it is that we have in abundance. Because not only would you be practicing the art of giving, but you're also showing the love of Christ when you do it. So get out there and share what you got. That's our show for this week. Until next time, make sure you tune in on our NLC Growing Together. We love you very much, and you rock our socks.